Welcome to Joshua Space, a podcast where I talk about all things books. I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming Natalie Camaratta on my second episode, who is the author of Falling Uprising. It's a dystopian science fiction trilogy with a third book getting released this coming September. Thank you so much for joining, Natalie.
Thank you so much for having me, Joshua. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. And would you do me the honor of telling everyone that's listening what your book is about, what Falling Uprising is all about?
Falling and Uprising, as you mentioned, is a dystopian YA sci-fi series. It follows two main characters. I like to call Serenity the it girl of her city. I consider it to kind of be a mashup of Gossip Girl and The Hunger Games. So a lot of people have said that if you take the world of The Hunger Games, but you were following someone from the Capitol instead, is the vibe that you'll get from Falling and Uprising. Serenity lives in the very utopian city, which is an island city, very modern skyscrapers and technology, and it's supposed to be the last dry land on Earth. But she finds out that it's not the last dry land on Earth. There are several islands right around them where life is not so good. And she meets a boy, Bram, from one of those other islands. And we see how they work together, even though they do not like each other very much, because they are from such different worlds, to bring an end to all of the secrets and the lies that are shrouding every side of society in this world.
I know for me, I absolutely loved it. I like the way you described it, kind of like Hunger Games as if it was taking place in the capital, because that is very much the vibe of Serenity and the city. And that's a perfect way to put it. And I like that. I like when a book, specifically a dystopian book, is set in a utopian society and you're shown this perfect city, this perfect world. Everything's perfect, everybody's happy, everything's working. Everything falls into place. And then as you start to read, you're presented with, oh, hey, by the way, this is all a facade. Everything's fake. Here's the truth of it. Now let's fix this. Let's figure out how we're going to deal with it. And I love that concept. And I don't think there's a lot of books that do that, at least not that I've been exposed to and that I read. I know the only other one that like immediately stands out would be Scythe by Neil Shusterman, and which I love that book. And so that's why I loved Falling and Uprising, because to me, it's the same level. It's that same, you have this perfect society, but it's really not perfect. And you have to figure out what to do.
Right. And, I think there's a lot of gray area with everything. There's not someone is just super evil, bad, awful. There are good things and there's reasons for stuff. It's not just bad for the sake of being bad.
Yeah.
And as we go through the series, we get even further into the history and the background of like how it all came to be the way it is, and layers on layers of secrets and lies. And it's been fun to uncover it all and have it unwound as it goes.
That's awesome. I'm a little nervous about book 2 with the way book 1 ended. So, like, I'm excited to read book 2, but I'm also stressed.
You and me both.
You're like, I was like, okay, well, book 3 comes out soon. So it's like, oh, awesome. Like, when? And you're like, oh, what was it, October or November? You're like,
September.
Well, that's not as bad.
It's coming soon. It's not. I was just talking to my friend who is helping me with all the publishing things for that one. And it's either going to be September 14th or 21st. Like, it is. It's in line editing right now. The cover is almost done. Like, okay.
Are you going
wrapping,
to be kind to everyone on Book Talk and keep the cover style the same for book 3? Or are you going to be like every other person and just be like, we're changing it?
No, they are very much belonged together. The audiobook has a different cover, which was a whole thing. So they all are the same. It follows along with the same cover design plan idea. Next year, when I get the rights back on the first two books, I don't know if I'm going to just like redo the whole thing when I self-publish them. We shall see. Haven't gotten there yet. Trying to get this book out, get the trilogy finished, so people can stop yelling at me about, those things and yell at me for different things and then figure out logistics. I really enjoyed Megan's question on Instagram.
Yeah, hers was the one about why you hate
J Serenity stands.
Yes.
But not specifically why I hate. Ask that jerk why. I'm pretty sure was her question.
Well, I like, who was it? Someone else put after, like, see, it wasn't me this time. And I think that's fantastic because that means you get this question often.
There are lots of angry people. It's fun.
Do you have, because I know obviously book 3 is coming out in a few months. Do you have plans to continue writing in this universe, or are you going to be writing after book 3 in general?
Definitely writing a lot of other things. I have a fantasy novel out on submission right now. I have a rom-com with my agent right now. I have another humorous fantasy book that I might be co-authoring. I'm everywhere. In this universe, at some point, while I was still writing probably book 2, I had a lot of other books that I was thinking about writing in the Falling Uprising universe. There's one or two, probably just one valid prequel that I've thought about. I've thought about writing basically the same trilogy, but from a different POV.
Okay.
That would be an interesting story. But now that I have finally finished the trilogy, and finishing it was really hard. Finishing a series was so difficult. Okay, what are all the loose ends from everything? And everything needs to wrap. And the stress of, people have a lot of big feelings about some things in these books.
I know nothing of what you speak of.
Right.
I'm not going to say name Megan.
Right. A lot of people named Megan get really upset about things. So, the pressure of, wanting it to be satisfying for people who've already read 2 books in it has been, yes, a challenge, but I'm happy with it and excited to get it out and also terrified of getting it out. So,
yeah, I can imagine. I feel like it would definitely be a mixed bag of feelings because it's like you're excited, but it's also, I feel like to a certain extent, it's kind of sad because it's like it's literally the end of a book and the end of a series. So you're kind of saying goodbye, at least for now, especially because you have other works in the future that you're planning. So it's like at one point you might go back. I do like the idea of writing in a different perspective, though. I've seen a couple authors do that, and I find it fascinating because I feel like you're able to explore certain things a little bit more, which is kind of fun.
Right, because there's a lot of things now that even with, multiple POVs in the books, there's still so many things that I know happen that aren't on the pages, and they can't be. They don't make sense to be, but they're interesting stories. So I've thought about it, but for now, I'm very happy to be done with the series and not have to write in it anymore. And I may have dug myself into like a 5-book series anyways in another one. So we'll see what happens with that.
So with the Falling Uprising trilogy, because it is in multiple POVs, which was your favorite to write? Which point of view was your favorite?
That shifted in a big way. At first, Serenity. Serenity was easier for me to write. This was my debut. It was my first book I ever wrote. So it was easy enough for me to go into her headspace. I was once a teenage girl, so that was easier for me. I liked what she was dealing with and what she was doing, so it was easier and I enjoyed it more at first. It used to be harder for me to get into Bram's headspace. There was a point where I needed to write him and I wasn't quite fully in it yet. This first draft, a long time ago, but I was having trouble with it. So I'd go into like, okay, and now I'm watching action movies and like exercising and went to like the gun range and like all these things to try to get more into his headspace. Um, and so it was harder for me getting out of my own actual mental bubble and really stepping into someone else's shoes. You know, Serenity, I did that with, but it was easier.
Yeah.
So, but then over time, he became a favorite to write. I really, really enjoyed writing him. And you've read Falling and Uprising.
Yeah.
There is a scene with liquor, which I think you'd appreciate. And to write that, this is the kind of research that I got into fiction writing for. I sat with my laptop in my kitchen and pulled liquor out and tasted those liquors so that I could appropriately write the feeling of it.
That's awesome.
So
I feel like that would be the funnest part of the research, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion, you know.
that was fun research. I also learned to play the beginning of the song that Serenity plays on the piano in the book.
Yeah.
I learned to play the beginning of that so that I could really feel that scene.
Did you know how to play the piano before you learned how to play that song? Or was that like you kind of just taught yourself by that song?
I was a singer. And so I did some piano with singing lessons for like scales and stuff. I know my way around a piano a little bit. I've learned to play songs. I don't really know how to play the piano, but I've learned to play a couple of songs. So YouTube has like the shows you the keys light up so that I could copy it and yeah, learn to play the beginning of that song so that I could feel that scene.
That's awesome.
It was fun.
So, are you a planner or a pantser?
Super pantser. I knew the ending. You know, I always knew the end of Falling and Uprising. A lot of things in the middle I did not know were going to happen at all. They were surprises as I wrote it. And so then after that fact, and that's why my first drafts are utter chaos because I'm finding the stuff out as it goes. And then I go, okay, well, now I need to go back and make sure that that actually makes sense for the whole book and that it's cohesive and doesn't look like I just made it up on page 200. So yep, that's been fun. Book 2 I was so thoroughly wrong about what that book was the first time I went to write it that I had almost 60,000 words written. And I decided, nope, I'm wrong. I'm wrong about the whole setup. I'm wrong about everything. And I opened up a new document and started over. And I was able to salvage scenes and pieces from the first version, but basically completely started over.
Oh, wow. How long did book 2? I'm assuming book 2 took you less time than book 1, or did it take, because you had to rewrite it, so did it take longer? What?
So it probably took longer.
Okay.
But also at that point, it kind of was I was going back and forth between working on that and the things I had to do for Falling and Uprising. When I was writing Falling and Uprising, that was all I had to do. It was my only book and I wasn't published. I wasn't even really on book social media yet at the time. So I wrote the first draft pretty quickly. And then once I started going back and forth with an agent and then an editor, like that wasn't too long doing those revisions and stuff. Once I was for Scattered and Breaking, I started writing it and then I had to put it away because I got feedback on Falling and Uprising and I had to revise it. And then I'd go back to Scattered and Breaking, but then I'd have to ignore it because I had to do more stuff for Falling and Uprising. So its timeline was never as straightforward anyways. And same thing now with book 3. I don't even know when I started writing it. I'd have to look that up. but it was partially written. And then I wrote 2 other whole books, or at least one. It was partially written and I wrote one whole other book. And then I went back to it and finished the draft and then wrote another book and then came back and finished, like fixed some notes so that I could send it out for edits.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
at this point, I'm always juggling so many manuscripts that I don't actually know how long any take me anymore.
That makes sense. So when you were focusing just on Falling Uprising, because you said you came up with the ending first, when you sat down to start writing, did you write the ending out and then go back and kind of work your way back to the beginning and write from there? Or did you just start at the beginning knowing what was going to happen at the end?
I started at the beginning. That one, I was very disciplined and actually wrote it chronologically straight through for the most part. Obviously, later on, I'd go back and add a scene type of thing, but really, I did write it beginning, middle, end.
Okay.
Other things I have written since then, not so much. I write all over the place. I'm getting more chaotic, which you would think would be the opposite. Like, I've done this before, so now I know what I'm doing and I can do things in a more orderly fashion. Nope, I don't do that. So whatever. But the beginning, but it's still true. I did write it from beginning to end. However, the opening itself did change. Like, I chucked the first 2 chapters and ended up with a new opening of it, but essentially it stayed the same. It just got a new opening scene.
Okay. So when you first came up with the idea, the concept of Falling Uprising, from the moment you decided, okay, I want to write this, to the end of your final edits, how long did that take?
I started writing it at the end of January 2020, right before I knew I was definitely going to need a hobby because the world hadn't broken yet. I was lucky. I started a hobby first before that happened. So I started at the end of January 2020. And in January of 2021, I did a developmental edit and finished that up, sent it back to my now agent in February. So 13 months.
Okay.
And about 2 months later, it was signed with both my publisher and an agent. So at the time, it felt like there's a lot of waiting and it's taking so long, but really that's really fast. So
that's really fast. I've heard of other stories where it's years.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to not let that kind of affect my expectations for other books now. I'm like, oh, I have one book out on submission and maybe it'll sit there for years. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, so what made you decide, because the books you have out on submission, you said it's a rom-com, a fantasy, and you have a humorous fantasy. What made you switch from, because Falling Uprising is very much a dystopian science fiction. What made you decide to switch paths?
So I am a very omnivorous reader. I read lots of different genres. And so my writing is affected by what kind of books I am consuming. So I was reading a lot of fantasy, and I actually had gotten an idea for one, not from the books I was reading, actually from like one random line in a children's movie that has nothing to do with the book now, but it was where the idea sparked from. And so it had been living in my brain, kind of in the background. And then I was reading enough fantasy that I was like, now I'm into it. This is my zone right now. So I started writing it. And kind of same thing with rom-coms. I had been listening to them a little bit. I had one already stashed in the back of my head that I was like, maybe I'll write someday, but that's not really my thing. And then I read a few and I was like, okay, I'm liking this maybe. And that one was actually a real whirlwind. It was literally, I had a bad day, binged a rom-com on audiobook the whole day. That night, went to bed, couldn't fall asleep, got out of bed, grabbed my computer at 11:30 p.m. I opened a new document and I ended up writing the whole book in like 28 working days.
Oh my goodness. That's
that I wasn't planning to write at all. So,
that's awesome.
oops, accidentally wrote a book. Like,
Yeah.
it is a thing that happens.
I was gonna say, I feel like when it comes to you like that, it's just gonna come out of you whether you like it or not.
Right. I've, I know some people that is their norm to write 6,000 words a day. That has never been me. But this one it was. And I was going, okay, cool. Like the words are just flowing. This is amazing. So, and I know it won't happen for every book, but
Yeah, but it's nice
it
to
was
happen once in a while.
a good experience.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a fun experience writing that one. So,
nice. So then I have a question, or hold on. I feel like I'm saying so too many times. So let me try and reword that really quick.
I realized that at some point that I started like 80% of my TikToks with so, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. Don't.
Honestly, it's like the just automatic, this is what I'm gonna start with. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not not
In college, I don't even remember what I guess like a speech class or something, like public speaking, we had this exercise and we were given a random topic out of a hat and speak on it for at least 1 minute without saying but like whatever filler words, right? And I went the longest. Like she had to just tell me to stop. Everyone else was being stopped as soon as I said one of those filler words. I never did. However, I did say so a lot, which someone else in the class was like, okay, well, she didn't use the ones you listed, but she did this. And I'm like, well, it wasn't on the list. So
that's awesome.
I win.
With your 3 books being out on submission already, are you able to tell us anything about them as far as maybe some of the character names or the themes? We know it's a rom-com, we know it's a fantasy or humorous fantasy. Are you able to give us a little bit more details on that?
So they're all actually kind of in different parts of the process right now. The fantasy novel is actually out on submission in the hands of a few editors, waiting to see what they think of it. That one is elemental magic. Kind of, it started in my head as siblings who have different elemental magic, kind of in like a Hunger Games for their crown of their kingdom. And again, that was what I thought it was at first, and then it became a whole different shebang. But it's really fun, lots of magic, makes me want powers. So yes, that one has been my love child for a little over a year.
Okay, so I'm going to interject really quick. With that, if you could have any elemental power, what would it be?
Okay, well, that's hard because I'm just going to pick my favorite character, not actually the power. I feel like that's spoilery. I mean, well, okay, I'll tell you the main character of this book, hypothetically, it could be a series. It does not have a cliffhanger. It has enough closure to be a standalone. However, in my mind, there is a lot more to tell. And so the main character of this first book, if it becomes a series, she controls air. And the things she does with it are, I think, unique. I hope are unique. And so I've really enjoyed the ways that she manipulates her power and her element and the things she finds to do with it. She has a sister who controls fire. That sister has a twin brother who controls water. And then they all have an older brother who, controls earth elements. And I think that my main character, thinks that, well, people might underestimate me because you can't see mine, but let me show you what I can do. And she was a lot of fun, and she's very spunky. So I say that one because that's the one I got to play with.
That's awesome.
While writing the most.
That makes sense. So is that one going to be young adult, or is it more new adult or adult?
I call it new adult, and my agent says publishers are just going to call it adult. And I'm like, but then like I wrote a grown-up book. What? I can't write a grown-up book. It's like you're a grown-up. You can. You did. I'm like, all right, if you say so. Because,
Yeah,
nervous writer things. So
I can understand that.
mhm. When I first started writing it, actually, I thought it was going to be YA because I was already writing YA.
Yeah,
And then I started writing it and I said, no, it's not. It's not. My characters informed me that they were at a different point in their lives with different things going on, and it was not going to be YA anymore. So I went, okay, fine, here we go.
that's awesome.
Again, pantser. I don't know what's going on until I write it. My
Honestly.
characters tell me what's what.
Yeah, I think that's kind of fun in a way, though, because you kind of get to experience the story as it unfolds instead of knowing everything that's going to happen while you're writing. I feel like because when I write, I'm very much a pantser. I try to plan and I will map everything out for like, let's say the first 15 chapters. Everything is the complete opposite. It never goes according to plan. And so I feel like it's kind of fun that way because you get to experience whatever your characters are going as yourself, as your own.
Oh, absolutely. Surprise! If there's no surprises for the writer, then there's not going to be surprises for the reader.
Exactly.
It's actually funny with Falling Uprising. There was the point when Serenity was making plans, and she's making plans with Jace, and she realizes, oh no, it can't be Thursdays. I have plans with my parents on Thursdays. And literally when I wrote it, I just apparently liked the day Thursday and put it twice and like didn't realize that I was accidentally double booking them and I was going to change one. I was like, oh, well, easy. I'm the author. I can just change the day of one of these. But then I went, oh, wait, what if it is the same day? What if she like double books and it ends up that like she has to smush these things together? This could be fun. So it really, it seems like she planned to do this. No, I didn't.
That scene is possibly one of my favorite scenes of the book. I absolutely love that, like how Serenity just kind of freaks out internally with trying to juggle everything and these plans and not wanting them to mingle together and then kind of having it self implode. I think it's fantastic because that's very much something I would do.
Obviously, I would too. I did just on paper instead of my real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an accident, a happy accident. All of Jace was basically an accident from my first plan of the book. So, yeah, I liked the way it turned out. It ended up being fun, so it stays.
That's awesome. And then
Keeps writing exciting.
Yeah, it keeps you on your toes a little bit too, which is fun. I know you're on Book Talk, and you mentioned that when you first started writing, you were not a part of bookish social media. At what point did you join like Instagram or TikTok and really become a part of the bookish side of social media? And also, how did that play in with your books?
Well, let's see. I had a long conversation with an agent when I was done drafting Falling Uprising, and she told me start getting on social media. And I'm like, but can I? I don't have a book. How am I supposed to go out there and be like, I'm a writer, but I don't have anything for you to read? How do I do this? So she said, no, but you need to start now. Okay, fine. And I started with I already had an Instagram, so I just changed my handle and made it my writer Instagram. I never really used it anyways, so it was fine. And at that point, yeah, it was really just Instagram at that point, which I'm still not really great at, but I show up. I'm not a professional photographer, and I'm not
difficult.
Instagram is hard. I'm not a photographer. I'm not good at this whole like aesthetic of the grid thing. I try to sometimes, and then I get fed up with it. So whatever. I've met some. It is. I've met a lot of great people there, though. So great. And I joined Facebook writing groups to try to connect with more writers at first. And found a nice little community, some communities of people, which was awesome. And then I made one little reel or video for Instagram because that was the only social I was really on. And another author friend of mine said, Natalie, this is so great. If you're making videos, like you should be on TikTok. And I said, I can't be on TikTok. I'm in my 30s. I'm too old for TikTok. I don't understand. I don't want to learn it. No. And she said, if you're making videos anyways, you just put them there too. Do it. Okay, fine. So I got on TikTok February of 21. So almost a year and a half.
Yep.
And started figuring stuff out, finding my ropes. And then I was like, oh my God, this is my favorite one. Like really quickly, I went from like, I don't want to do TikTok to yay, TikTok. Met so many great people and already had people rooting for me before the book even got signed. So then, had people lining up to get the book as soon as it was out. And that was amazing to me. I was like, how do you know that you want this? You've never read a single word I've written. This could be awful. What? So yeah, TikTok has been so helpful with the launch of this series. And it's where I definitely found most of my readers. So I love it.
Yeah, it has a special place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like with, like you're saying, Instagram, I have tried with Instagram. It's just, I try. I'm just going to take the same photo of different books.
Mm-hmm.
If I like some of these people, and I know right now on Book Talk, the trend is Bookstagram, which I think is hysterical. And I've seen so many people on Book Talk showing how they're doing these different aesthetic photos and they're doing all these things and they're buying plants for this and they're buying props and they're doing papers and they're doing cutouts. And I'm just like, how do you have the time, the energy, and the amount of cleanup work that it is involved is insane. Because like I will film a video and I have to clean up after. I take an aesthetic photo and it takes so much more effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had my moments and then I'm like, this is a lot of effort and I don't think it's really helping anyways. So whatever, forget it.
Yeah.
At this point, my brand is to be chaotic. So whatever.
I feel like it's a good brand to have.
It works.
It does. And it connects with more people, I feel like, because if you have a very, like, that is also the other thing that I personally feel is when I see a page on Instagram that's super, super aesthetically pleasing, but also like perfect, quote unquote, like it's just everything is perfectly done and perfectly placed. I feel very intimidated by it. And I don't really connect with it as much. I think the photo is beautiful. I think the page is amazing, but I don't really see the person behind the page and I don't connect with that aspect. Whereas with TikTok and just with people on Bookstagram who are a little chaotic, I feel like I can connect with them more and I have more of like, what's the word?
Rapport.
Yes, rapport.
I agree. I think that's the big difference between the two. And I think that's why probably both of us have been more successful on TikTok is because we're personable, when we can laugh at ourselves,
Yeah.
both of us, I think. And that's why I think on and even like as an author on Instagram, what was I really going to like tell people before the book was out? Yes, about the book a little bit, but you can only do so much. And people see so many books, right? That they all kind of look the same. We all have a zillion books on our TBRs. But on TikTok, you feel like you know the person. I think you get to know people a lot better on TikTok than you do on Instagram based on just on their content alone. And people want to support people that they know and like. So
Yeah.
That's why I've enjoyed TikTok more too.
We're not biased at all.
Although now Reels get so many more views on Instagram than TikTok will get. So it's kind of all over the place.
It really is.
social media monster.
Yeah. What I recently noticed too, Instagram got a TikTok page and like it came up on my For You page, and it was this person on like the official Instagram page saying, look at these new updates on Instagram. And I'm in my mind, I'm like, if you're on TikTok promoting Instagram ain't doing well. Like
Interesting.
it was promoting the reels. Like it was like, look at these updates. We're doing up to, I think it's like a 1.5 or 2-minute video. No, 3-minute videos. I don't know. They added more than just a 60-second video for reels. And they were taught, and I was like, okay, this is hilarious.
Instagram is on TikTok saying, look, we're more like TikTok now. So come back, please.
Literally. I think the only question left is your favorite question that you were so incredibly excited for that you even messaged me and said, I can't wait for this one. What is your favorite book?
Like my favorite of my 4 current reads, or I don't understand the question. I can never pick a favorite book for anything.
What's your favorite read of this year so far? Or let's say top 3 books of this calendar year that you've read.
I'll at least pick different genres, okay? So that we can be fair about this. Pulling out my list of 65 books I've read this year.
Nice. 65 is an accomplishment.
I've been addicted to audiobooks this year. So yep, things are getting wild. I'm going to say between those two though, I really loved the Ember and the Ashes series. I read all 4 books of that this year and loved that by Saba Tahir. Yeah. So that's probably going to be my YA, fantasy things pick.
Saba is an amazing author, by the way. I love her. She's awesome.
Oh my gosh. So good. So good. That was one of the ones that I'm going, why did this sit on my TBR for so long?
Honestly.
What was I doing with my life? Certainly not reading 100 other books and writing 5, whatever.
Exactly.
Oops.
Just a couple things.
Few things. And then I have also been had a whole rom-com thing this year. And I think my favorite is hard to say, but I'm going to say Abby Jimenez's probably Happy Ever After Playlist. It's the second of 3 books in that series. And I love them all, but I think Happy Ever After Playlist might be my favorite one. Each chapter was a song title, first of all. So
awesome.
Auto bonus points for that. Yeah, that was one of the ones that I read maybe in a day, maybe 2. No, we have 1 day. And ended going, okay, that made me smile and cry. And I need to now, it was one of those moments where I finished and went, am I really an author? Because I could never write that. So it gave me an identity crisis, but in a good way because the book was great. So I'll still say I love it, even though it made me concerned about myself. Always something.
Yeah. Gotta love that imposter syndrome. So wonderful.
It's so fun.
So, well, that was only 2 genres. That was young adult fantasy and that was rom-com. Do you have any others, or would you say those are like your top 2 of the year?
Those are my big genres that I read. So those were, was it this year that I read? I think so. Oh, goodness. Okay. So this one was very different for me, but I read Next Year in Havana by Chanel Clayton, which has dual timeline of a woman, modern day in her 30s, I think, going to visit Cuba to scatter her grandmother's ashes. And also a timeline of her grandmother being exiled from Cuba in the 50s. And I assume that for anyone, it's a great read. For me, it was an especially great read because my family is from Cuba. So it just thinking about, my grandmother also lived in Cuba and, left in the 60s. So it really made me go like, oh my gosh, I want to go there. And I just couldn't put it down. It was so great. And it's not usually what I read. But again, I kind of go all over the place. I read almost all the genres. And I absolutely adored that book. So that was my off-brand read of the year.
That's awesome. I love when a book makes you think about yourself and who you are as a person, but also the history of your family. Like there's a few books I read recently that really, it just kind of makes you stop and think about what our ancestors went through, basically.
Absolutely. Yep. That one definitely hit on a personal level for me. But again, I think it would be a great read for anybody because it was a very interesting story. But that's one of the things that I tell people, every once in a while, I stumble across someone who says, I usually read nonfiction. And I'm like, first of all, I don't barely know what that means. But
Yeah.
I like to point out that there's plenty of things that you can still like learn, I think, about the human condition in fiction. It was actually whichever the second one is of Akatar, A Court of Mist and Fury, whatever they are. The second one, I was reading it, and Akatar spoilers in case anyone hasn't read them. but oh, good.
But that's okay.
You're fine. You've seen the TikToks,
Honestly, I know most of the things that happen. It's like Harry Potter. I know most of the things that happen. I probably will never read it. I own Akatar. I might eventually read it, but by the time I do, yeah.
You can't really get around book talk without knowing the major things. So
Honestly.
it's what it is. But there was a point where, so the love interest changes. And I, at some point, was feeling like, why doesn't she feel more guilty for just like abandoning Tamlin? And she should feel more guilty. I would feel guilty. And it kind of, then when she was examining like all of the things that were wrong with that relationship that she got out of, I went, okay, well, that makes sense. And I think I was putting it on her that like she should feel guilty about this because I would feel guilty about it. And like I have trouble like leaving a commitment because I said I was committed and so I have to be. And kind of made me realize like, but that's not healthy.
Yeah.
Just to stay in something because you said you were going to do it and now you're stuck with it forever. And so there's a lot of things that, you can still make you think and apply to the real world, even if they are in a sci-fi or fantasy setting where other cooler things happen that you don't get to see in the real world.
Nice. I like that. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. And I hope I might be able to convince you to come back when book 3 releases and possibly when your new adult fantasy novel comes out.
I'll come back anytime. I'm always available to hang out with you.
Much appreciated.
See if I can get some different angry questions from readers next time.
Yes. Oh, there was a question I saw that someone asked on Instagram. Which character is your favorite to write? So do you have a favorite character to write about, not necessarily the point of view?
Yep, you're right. I took it as which character to write as, but there are some fantastic other characters in these books that I do really enjoy writing. Vogue is just so fun. I do adore writing Vogue. And when I was getting ready for Scattered and Breaking to come out, I put it out there on TikTok and Instagram that there was going to be a third point of view in book 2 and taking guesses for who it would be. Most people guessed either Vogue or Jace. To Jace, it was just, well, no, because I didn't want to for certain story reasons. But Vogue was, I would love to, but I don't think I can handle actually stepping into Vogue's shoes and writing as her. Like, she's smarter than me and she's so sassy. Adore her. I'm like intimidated by her. So no, she can't be a POV character because I'm scared to try.
I mean, maybe when you go back and you write the story in a different perspective, you can include her as like just a short little intro or something.
My original it kind of would have been like a prologue chapter really. For Scattered and Breaking was actually Vogue's POV from like a point in during Falling and Uprising, and it got cut, but it was interesting even just for that a chapter to be Vogue. It's like, oh my gosh, can I handle this? So, but she is an absolutely delightful character. I adore her. She's so smart and such a little badass, and she's great.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Jill, for the question.
I'm surprised that Jill just gave like a straightforward question like that, because usually her questions for me are why and how dare you. So,
She was the one who responded to Megan because Megan said, "Can you ask this jerk why she dislikes us J Serenity stands?" And Jill was the one who said she messaged you or she tagged you and was like, "It wasn't me this time. It was not me this time."
there are plenty of people yelling at me.
Oh, I believe it. Comes with the territory of being an author, I think.
It's fun. I mean, you don't get upset about books that you didn't connect with. So
That's true.
I'm all for it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining, and thank you for bringing Falling and Uprising into the world. And I cannot wait to read book 2. I am going to try and read it soon, but part of me feels like I need to wait until book 3 is out because I'm stressed.
Yeah, I really enjoyed when book 2 was coming out. I said, so maybe you haven't read Falling and Uprising yet because you've heard my readers crying about a cliffhanger. Well, great news. You can read it now because here's book 2. And sure enough, I had ARC readers getting in the comments going, but the end of book 2. And I'm like, shh, can you please? Like
our secret.
Come on. Like trying to sell some books here, if you please. Thank you. The waits have not been as long as, come on, we've all waited years for books to come out. I will drop everything when the 6th book of Red Rising comes out, okay? That's been a long time.
Oh my word, it has been years. Or the 3rd book in Patrick Rothfuss's series.
I haven't read that one. I know that one is another.
I haven't read it. I have not read it, but I'm pretty sure the 3rd book, it's been over a decade. Like it is years. And I don't think there's like an official, this is when it's coming out. It's still kind of like working on it, but not really.
Yeah, I made a TikTok once. I think I said this in a TikTok once that, I know that Pierce Brown, really admired the work of George R.R. Martin. And I said, I really hope one of the things that he was like, oh, this is a good idea, was to write 5 books and then not finish a series. Not the things we want to learn from George R.R. Martin. Thank you. Please finish Red Rising.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was so nice chatting with you.
It was awesome.
Next time there will be purple martinis.
Yes, I thought about it, but I was like, yeah, it's only 11. I mean, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, but next time martinis for sure.